Good afternoon, everyone. We took a short hiatus here, a summer break, as it were, and we're back. The three consulting amigos. I'm Ray Anderson, and basically, I've devoted much of my career to being able to help frontline workers get more engaged in the business so that you can actually use them and all that infinite knowledge they have to be able to move your organization both in the direction you want and get the results you want. Joining us today, of course, is Ron Burgess, and I'm going to let Ron introduce himself, and then we're going to move over to Ed, who's going to explain a little bit about the 8 drivers. And today we're going to focus on investigating M&A partnerships and opportunities. It's an area where Ed specifically has some strong interest and some experience. With that, Mr. Burgess, would you like to go ahead?
As Ray said, my name is Ron Burgess. I've been in consulting for 30-some years and in business for 4+ decades. And I have a nonprofit right now, which is my primary business interest, called MicroGiants.
Thank you. Ed.
Yeah, my name is Ed Lasak, and I'm the architect of a website called dreambigexit.com. I have 35 years as a CPA and also as a CFO and COO of various operations. And from that experience, I've come to develop these 8 ways of optimizing a business, 8 drivers. And each one of our programs has been focusing on one of them. Today, we are going to focus on driver number 7, which is one that, quite frankly, I've done a horrible job in my career optimizing, because for the most part, I've been so busy doing my job, focusing on the company that I was representing, that I very seldom looked outside to see what our competitors were doing, and also some of our customers and vendors. So this is a driver that really can add a lot of value, and you have to regiment yourself to spend some time thinking about other things besides your business. And when you have a full agenda every day, it's very difficult to do that. So somehow you got to make time to focus on this driver. But I'll tell you, I think it's a very powerful driver for driving results for your company. And it starts off by looking at our slide number 12, which Ron will be bringing up on the deck here right now. There it is, driver number 7, investigate M&A and partnerships, looking outside of your company. Get your head from under the sand, take it up and look around and see what's going on. And I recommend you start by knowing your competitors more intimately. And it's something that most companies don't do. For whatever reason, we're into battle to the death rather than looking for opportunities to make us all better. So the only way you can do that is you have to understand how your company is different from your competitors. And then you have to start trying to develop relationships with people that you're competing with. And it can start with an industry group, which is kind of safe ground for most people. And by going to industry group meetings, you can develop relationships with your competitors and continue a dialogue with them for many reasons. It's a very healthy process. For instance, if you're interested in selling your business somewhere down the road, guess what? Your competitors are probably the best pool of buyers that you could be looking for. Having a relationship with them and telling them generally which way you're going so they know a little bit about your company is probably a positive thing. And hopefully you'll learn a little bit about their company. Another thing it's really helpful is to benchmark against your competitors so that you can identify how your company is performing compared to others in the industry.
Hey,
So,
Ed, I'd like to ask a question. Do you know,
sure, right
I
ahead,
know
Rick.
there are things like RMA that provides benchmarks on specific industries. You know, is that how you would most effectively be able to kind of benchmark yourself? You know, using a standard that's already there, or what do you recommend?
I think that's a great place to start, and you have to start someplace. But the problem with the benchmarking, when you're looking up, when you're comparing to some generic format like that, when you come up with these variances, you don't know, you got to understand why. And knowing the various companies that are in the benchmarking study is very helpful. So you can compare your results with theirs eventually. But it requires a lot of trust to be in that type of a position. So I think starting with the RMA is a great way of beginning this benchmarking process.
Let me also say, while I do agree with the benchmarking process, I have found it to be extremely difficult to accomplish. And the reason is it's for small business, and there isn't really very good data for small niche markets within an industry. So if you happen to be a retailer and you can get a subgroup, you might be able to get shoes versus clothing, but there's a really big difference between how a high fashion women's store will do and a coat store like Burlington Outlet or something. And so that's obvious, but it's even difficult to go to a specialty store and compare those numbers with someone like a discount shoe operation with 20,000 square feet. So the benchmarking ends up looking a little different than what you might expect if you're trying to pull it from various records, say financial records. When you have a large stock traded company, those numbers are available. But I think you have to be creative in a lot of ways in order to benchmark against a real competitor. I have found that to be extremely difficult, and so you keep your ear to the ground to try and figure that out. But it's virtually impossible to tell what the shoe store across the city that's similar to yours is doing, because it's a single operation and they're not sharing their numbers with anybody. There's just no way to benchmark directly. So that's part of the problem. Sometimes, though, you can go to industry associations and they will compile numbers that will allow you to do that to a certain degree. The problem, again, is that small businesses are successful because they have very small niche markets. As they have wider and wider and wider markets, you can do the benchmarking, but they tend to be less and less successful. And so, as you try to do benchmarking, you could get numbers that are completely out of whack unless you have a really intimate understanding of the true differences between your business and the kind of business that you're trying to benchmark against. So I find that to be very, very difficult to accomplish.
Yeah, I think by going up against industry standards, you can get an idea how you differ from the group, but you can't really identify why. And it's really hard to share information when you're competing with somebody head to head. However, there are some opportunities. I've done it. I represent a West Coast operation, and they compete with several other companies in that area. And obviously, we couldn't benchmark against them directly. We could in general, but not by company. So what we did is we found an East Coast and we found a Texas operation that was very similar. And we shared data between our company and theirs. And that gave us much more specific information as to why we were coming up high or low on various metrics that we were comparing against.
You bring up a good point. If you get outside of your market area, if you're not on the internet, you can get outside your market area in another state, for instance, as you say, and make friends with your supposed competitors, and then compare notes. I always found that worked pretty well. In fact, we put together buying groups that way so that we could help each other find good products. And then this is in the retail industry. And then as we got to know each other and trust each other, we were able to share turnover numbers and margin numbers, markup numbers, pricing. It's not collusion type pricing. I don't mean that. It's just like what's your standard markup. How much are you paying for salespeople? Those are the kinds of things that are truly helpful. And I've been a little bit successful in being able to do that with the dairy operation, but it's difficult because we're still a different operation has a lot of different components to it, so they're not actually one for one. But you're right, Ed. As a place to start and get a feel for, how much inventory you'd be carrying, what kinds of contribution margins are normal, what kind of rental costs are you paying? Those are all basic items. I think you can collect a lot of those. It's just hard to sit down and make it a project.
Yeah,
you have to gather it all the time and kind of keep it on one page.
What I think I like about this, Ed, is that you've shown us in a short amount of time here that this idea of collaborating and partnering, has a lot of facets to it. And just as Ron and you were saying, you don't have to come to somebody here who you're competing with directly. If you can look at some other region, and they'll gladly share information because it's in their interest to do that. So, great idea.
You just have to have the interest in doing so, and again, in having the time to do so, because it's time consuming, but the results can be remarkable.
Well, and I would suggest that what you've done, Ed, is by simply bringing it up and saying. Now, some people might want a little bit longer explanation of what benchmarking is, but just bringing it up and saying you need to compare yourself with your competitors, then putting it in the business owner's mind. That's the start, because
yes.
The rest of their career, they should be benchmarking. I still do benchmarking. I've owned 5 businesses. I do benchmarking, at least in my head, on all 5 of those businesses. And several others for my clients too. I can't stop doing it.
Well, you should do it because again, what we're trying to do with these 8 drivers is create extra value.
Right.
And if you create extra value, you might as well sell your company. But I think every company you can create extra value. And here's one that that really can make a difference if you spend some time doing it. Changing the subject a little bit, another great opportunity for learning about your your competitors is talking to your vendors. Your vendors, they talk to all your competitors. They know a lot about your competitors, and keeping your ears open and listening rather than talking all the time could add some value there. And, I've even been with vendors where they say, it's amazing. If you and this company were hooked up together, man, you'd be a powerhouse. You guys would integrate with each other very well. So, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for those types of potential partnerships that can add value. So listen to your vendors. That's really important.
I can cite an example. I had, when I was working with a window company here in Ontario, the owner of the company, said that during the downturn of the late 90s, when things really went south, he said if it hadn't been for his suppliers, he would have lost. But because they were so big, they're willing to defer his payments, which gave him a chance to really survive, whereas otherwise he might not have been able to do that.
Right. And getting back to getting back to, I want to make one more comment about benchmark. I'm going to back up just a second here on that. Ron mentioned that and about, the importance of maybe doing that with an East Coast operation. What's really great about that is you build, and Ron mentioned this, a trusting relationship. And when you start looking at someone to buy your operation, guess what? That becomes really important. So benchmarking could lead to a potential buyer of your business.
Right.
The last item under knowing your competition is kind of envision how your operation would combine with another operation and what type of advantages would that combination provide. For instance, maybe you could do everything in one facility rather than two. Just as an example, that's leveraging your assets more effectively. Maybe you can do a better job of providing services to the ultimate customer, which is very, very important. And then also you can improve your margins, which is very helpful for everybody to make more money so you can invest more money into the company. So again, know your competitors better. And unfortunately, I think most companies don't do a very good job of this. The ones that do, I think, have a greater opportunity to become bigger and better compared to the other competitors in that industry. The other one is number two, and it's really important also. It's not only the competitors in your specific line of what you do, but also related lines that might be attractive to you to purchase or partner with, again, to provide a better product to the ultimate customer. So keep your eyes open on both of these because direct competitors as well as somewhat indirect competitors, because you never really know what could really be the silver bullet that could really make a difference in your operation. Again, you want to be able to come up with better pricing, better distribution, and improved quality. And sometimes by buying something related to what you do or partnering with somebody that's doing something related to what you do can make the overall product better.
Well, I think it's interesting. This ties in very nicely with Ron's value diamond. And the point you're making here, Ed, is that there's lots of ways of looking at things, and this is just another way of taking the value diamond and trying to see outside the box, so to speak.
That's right.
Right.
Number three is be knowledgeable.
Ed, do you mind putting your mouse next to the where you're at so it's easier for us to follow along?
Right there, Ray. Number three. Be knowledgeable of the companies that are for sale. And I find most of the time people have no idea what's up for sale unless they contact you. But you really want to be looking all the time and seeing what's for sale. And it's not only a fully functioning company that's doing well that they want to exit the business. That would be kind of a strategic purchase for you. But it's also companies that are bankrupt or going out of business that have equipment that might be of value to you. You might be able to pick up with pennies on the dollar. So again, being aware of what's going on in your industry is extremely important. And looking at mergers and acquisitions is a way for you to grow and really provide some significant improvements to your bottom line. Any comments about that one, gents?
I just agree.
Yeah, and I think the point you made is that if it's an added chore for a CEO, owner, and executive, but the truth is, it can be very revealing when somebody that you know is in your market niche sells. It gives you a specific way of being able to look at that and see whether it's worth it to you, because some of this information is available, particularly if you go and look at the company. Because the value of that is if you go and look at the company, they have to give you the financials. So in some ways, there's your comparison right there. You know, it gives you access to information that otherwise you wouldn't have.
That's a very good point. Access to that information. You sign an NDA, and you got the keys to the kingdom. You can kind of see what's going on,
Yeah.
and you can learn a lot from that exercise, whether or not you move forward on an acquisition.
I guess I will add. I think that there's another dimension here that is inferred, and that is that if you have an opportunity to do that, you could go through the exercise. I'm not sure how many business people would be comfortable with that, but certainly, Ed Lasak could go through that with you and put a value on a company for sale that's similar to your own.
Yeah.
Now you've got a real interesting benchmarking opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've known a couple of people in my career who put these deals together, and of course they might be working for the owner of the business, or they might not be. They could be working for their investors, which I think most often is the case. But the whole idea of mergers and acquisitions, which you don't hear in small business very often at all, but mergers and acquisitions is the idea of taking a piece of this and a piece of that, and here's this company, and spin that off for X amount of dollars. Together, you have more value than you had separately. Or some people will buy a whole company, and separately there's more value than there is as a whole. So that's a specialty in business. It's a special finance kind of thing that is not discussed or understood in small business to speak of at all. It's really an unusual thing, but that doesn't mean it couldn't actually be done.
Right.
To be able to expand your factory space by buying another factory, to be able to consolidate, as Ed has already suggested, consolidate two factories into one building in order to be able to cut costs, maybe lower fuel and electric power costs. That sort of thing is just a plain value proposition where you look at what the market value is now, what it could be if you model it and put it together in a different way. That I think is one of the ways that some larger companies look at it, and they deal with how valuable is my business, and is it worth more to somebody else than it is to me? And sometimes it is, and then so they sell it. Yeah. We small business people tend to get vested in the idea of it's mine. I built this, and I don't want to sell it because I put those machines together myself.
That's right.
I designed my office. And
Right.
if you're trying to make money at the end of your career, you have to kind of go, forget all of that stuff.
Right.
What's the market value? Let's be realistic about the market value.
Well, here's an interesting observation. When Ed and I were working with a particular company, he was the one that kept them in mind of, look, you got to look for opportunities outside. As it happened, there was a business that was in an allied field, wasn't directly a competitor, but it used a lot of the same tools, resources, and other things. And they were able to get the business along with one of the principals to come and make sure that it was moving forward. I thought it was a very slick way of being able to grow the business through acquisition, but it wasn't a direct one-on-one, but it still gave them leverage because it used, so much of the business was alike.
Yeah. And there's also kind of another aspect. Similar businesses can buy similar businesses, and it might only be worth X on the out if you just sell a business to somebody. But to a similar business, to buy a piece of it or merge in some way, if you're in that business, you have resources that a new buyer may not or probably doesn't have. Those resources are in the way of connections, who know your industry, who know how to sell a big stamping machine. to know and understand people who repair products that might be broken or damaged, but because you know how to repair it, it's now worth more money. And I'm sure there are a million other things that you can think of where just knowing the industry gives you advantages that are way above somebody coming in to just buy your business. And therefore, you might get more money selling your business to a similar company or a competitor because they see the value. Now, they're going to want to keep the value for themselves. So if you're buying like that, then of course you want to buy it for the price that the outside person would pay, whatever that multiple is. But you can afford to maybe beat that multiple because you know that the real multiple is higher than that. So there's more than one way to skin a cat, and it's not just about profit. And then your multiples based on your sale. These are some more financial ways of making money.
Absolutely. And you can't always go by a price that's given. And this is one of the problems we all have. Someone says, okay, Ron, you're selling your car. How much do you want for it? Ron throws out a number, and normally the reaction is, well, that's too much. But really, when you're dealing with buying businesses, it takes a lot of analysis to truly understand the value of that company by itself combined with yours, and then also the strategic improvements that can be made by consolidating operations. And so you, in my opinion, you got to go with it. You got to look at all the detail. You have to run through the numbers, and the numbers will help both parties settle on the right price. So it's a process rather than yes or no on a number.
So as we're having this conversation, I'm digging back into almost over 50 years of doing business, and recalling that my brother-in-law at one time was selling little assets of companies. And in this particular case, he was selling patents. So he would go to General Electric and IBM and ITT and all of these big companies that have big research budgets, and they're all about inventing things. And he knows that of the things that get invented, only a small fraction are even within the business area that the company is in. He could go buy some sort of a chemical combination from General Electric, and they're not a chemical company, but one of their researchers ran into it and they pursued it and they discovered and or invented something. So that doesn't mean much to that company, but it means a lot to another company. So it's kind of hard to believe, but there are actually brokerages or sales brokerages, a little like business brokerages, where all they do is sell patents. And he would travel all over the country and pitch these various patents for businesses that might have a higher use for the patent than the company that owned it then.
Right, right. I was going to cite an example, Ed, that I think you kind of related to about how you can work better with your vendors or suppliers. Recently, one of my clients was desperately looking for a mechanic. And as you probably suspect right now, it's really hard to find people, particularly with specific skills. And as he was driving down the street, he was saying, I got to think out of the box. And he passed a Snap-on tool truck. And he immediately turned around and he pulled the guy over and he says, hey, I got a question for you. I'm looking for a mechanic. You know anybody? He says, oh yeah. He said, I got a couple of people. And within a week and a half, just by walking up to this guy and asking him cold, he found his mechanic. And so, I mean, it's kind of consistent with what you're saying, is that when you start thinking about how you can partner with people, you get access to information otherwise you wouldn't.
Right.
But how many companies do we know of and we have worked with that their whole day is focused on going to work, working 12, 14 hours a day in their facility and going home and not talking to anybody outside of the organization?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
all the
And I think
time.
that's one of the challenges you have when you're in sales and marketing, because a lot of successful companies, that's all they do. And
Right.
you're missing the point. You have to be constantly talking to your customers to find out how you can better serve them. And that takes real work. And sometimes people don't
Yes.
want to do that.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
yeah,
You know, that
that's
sounds like work.
yeah, that's right. Well, the part of having a good competitive analysis system or customer analysis system is a feedback, and it's easy for people to say, yeah, well, we did a survey, and I've had a lot of clients say, well, we did a survey 2 years ago. We did, we do one every 3 years. All right, that's good. That's a start. But a real feedback system is continual and ongoing.
Yes.
It's a system that is just as powerfully organized and managed as a manufacturing line. In other words, you put it in place. It's working every day. The information comes in. You are communicating with your salespeople. You said to them part of their job after you have a conversation with a customer, what are the kinds of things that came up, about our competitors? What did they say about us? What did they say about the other person? What about our products? So what normally happens is those conversations have always gone on. And then what happens is that, we got together at the sales meeting, and one of the sales guys said to the sales manager, the vice president, the owner, I was having a conversation about such and such, and he told me about this company, and they're going to come out with a product exactly like ours. In fact, they've knocked us off, and they're underpricing us. Well, okay, something important like that.
Yeah.
But it happened a month later. And by the time the information gets to somebody that can do something about it, the product is already there, and they've already been out talking to a bunch of people at a lower price, and you just had your legs cut out from underneath you. That's stupidity there. That's why one company gets beat by another company. And the problem is that systematic mechanisms are not put into place and maintained to gain access to information. We think the internet's got all the stuff, and there is a lot. But how do you organize it on a regular basis, feed it back to the people in the company who are going to pay attention to it? That's this knowledge, internal knowledge that a company needs in order to stay competitive in a digital world today. It's
Right.
not all, you just can't go look everything up on Google and find out about it, so your competitor, somebody Googles your competitor and they go on and they don't see anything about that product until the product's ready. And
Right.
then it's
That's
too late. Then it's too late.
Yeah, and the point you made, Ron, it's consistent with this, Ed. So if you don't mind us kind of exploring it more deeply, but we were talking earlier about the chance and opportunity for you to work with other people outside your organization. The hard part is that you were talking about an operational line. The owner can walk out and he can see whether it's functioning the way he wants to or not. But a lot of these systems, like you're talking about, they're out of sight and therefore they're out of mind. And I think one of the challenges that we're confronted with here, and one of the advantages of having a group like us aboard, is because we will look at it from different ways, not because we're smarter or better, but it's because we've been there and we've had some experience. I'm not pushing us as much as I am the idea that everybody has to begin to look at things differently in order to change the way things are going inside an organization. And as you pointed out, Ron, if you don't have a system to be able to collect, analyze, and review information, then how are you going to know?
You just blithely go along until you realize your sales have dropped 3% for 5 years in a row. And now your market position went from number 3 to number 6. And strangely, because we know and understand how numbers work like that, because of the PIMS principles, now your margins have actually dropped to 1/3 the level of your number one competitor. You can't compete anymore because they're just driving expenditures through the roof, and you haven't got any money to do any of that.
Yeah, good observation.
The last item, item number 4, I'm going to put my cursor on it right there, is basically an opportunity to expand your business for free. But unfortunately, when I talk to many customers or many clients about this, they scratch their head. This is so foreign to them that it's hard for them to understand it. But looking outside of your company for partnerships that are valuable to you and some other company, just by signing some type of a contract or deal of agreement, you can move forward and without spending any money and start working together in a collaborative manner and identifying opportunities where you can benefit your company as well as somebody else's. It's a great way to get started. It's like introducing you to a dance partner before you actually ask them to dance. You really get an opportunity here to know somebody. And from that, then other things can happen. Once you start a relationship where you're working together on an ongoing basis, then all of a sudden the trust starts kicking in, as Ron mentioned earlier, and there's opportunities for you to take it to the next step. And that could be some type of a merger, it could be a sale if somebody wanted out, all kinds of opportunities there that could develop because of this relationship. But I gotta say again, most people don't get it when we first mention it to people that it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me just mention that in one of my companies, Red Fusion, is a technical marketing company. I say technical only in the sense that we are always at the bloody edge of technology. We were able to collaborate with a lot of other smaller independent companies that were internet oriented. They built websites or they built on-site tools and that sort of thing. And things have progressed mightily in that area, and they continue to just explode. There's a huge amount of research on digitalization and how things are changing because of the internet. We thought maybe they'd be done by now, but 25 years later, we're seeing as much innovation today in the internet as we ever did. We were able to do several projects with partners that benefited us both. And we didn't do exactly the same kinds of things, but we could either help fund a project for somebody who could do coding, or else we would come up with an idea for a little mini product that would be part of a website that we would utilize a lot. One of them was an RSS feed, which is in its early days was not understood by a webmaster very well, but we were able to see the benefit of that and to directly send messages from a customer to anybody on the website, anybody who wanted to sign up for a message. So it was an early messaging system, and we were able to get an extra add-on every single month for that little service. And then he did, and then our partner did, and then I believe we sold a few of those. So that was just one thing. There were dozens of little teeny collaborative things that were done in developing technology. Now, many of those things became obsolete because the idea was sound, but some other company came along and determined that it had some real commercial value, and so they jumped into that. And so we see the results of all of those things on our phones in terms of texting capabilities and social media capabilities.
And all the apps.
So all of the apps that come out of that, and so that technology is a way that new young cutting edge businesses can help each other move ahead and save money on development, because if you wait for it to happen, your advantage in the market is already over. Somebody else is selling it for less than you could afford to sell it for. So that level of innovation that we were able to have for some 10 or 15 years was one way that we differentiated ourselves from everybody else. Because we started out alone, but believe me, after 22 years, there were lots of competitors in that business.
Yeah.
Yeah, so driver 7 is a lot of it has to do is looking outside your company and trying to develop relationships with more of your competitors, vendors, everybody that could add value to your company. Develop a relationship with them, because the one thing we do know in business, and it's very true, and that is business deals are based on relationships. And if you have a relationship, even if it's a minor relationship, you have an opportunity to do a deal that's more effective than dealing with somebody you don't know at all. So I think the time you spend in this area could add significant value to your bottom line. We talk about improving the profitability of the company. We talk about improving the multiple. A deal in one of the with an outside competitor could have a significant impact on both, and obviously really have a big impact on the sales price of your company.
Good. Well, with having said that, is that pretty much a wrap on your kind of exploration of driver 7?
Yes, I think it's a good summary of items to look at for other companies that want to improve their profitability and the price of their company. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, let me add before you close, Ray. One of the things we've talked about many times together, and I'm not sure if it's been part of this series, but it really has to do with an owner developing a management team that can run the business. The way that you do some of these things is to having done that first. If you're still doing the same things you used to do when you started the business, you probably haven't developed a management team that can run the business in your stead. It doesn't mean you don't have control. It doesn't mean you don't make major decisions, but it's very possible for an owner who is careful about and knows and understands people and it has a big enough business to be able to hire, the people. It's certainly possible to be able to run your business in one day or one half day a week. And I know this because I've done that. And that's where the time comes from. This is how you develop these things, is by not having to run your business on a day-to-day basis. Your business should be semi-automatic. It should be a whole giant system, just like what we talked about for feedback from your salespeople. It needs to be a system that people can execute and make decisions on a relatively autonomous way. And this is where the time comes from to be creative, be innovative, do the research, develop new products. That's why we were able to develop new products. When I was in the retail business, we did a lot of product development and system development in inventory systems and cash register systems and direct mailing programs. The only way we had that is because I had a lot of time to look into them and understand them before we made a decision about how we were going to attack a new line of business or a new line of marketing. So this idea of being the guy who works 50 or 60 hours all the time is not the way you get rich. It's the way you stay a working man. That's what that does. And so learn to manage your people and develop systems And that's how you increase your value as well, so that you can do all of these things that Ed has put up here for us.
Well, you
Yeah,
bring
and
up
I think I wanted to add one other piece if I can here. One of the challenges that we see inside of these smaller organizations is they tend to hire what they can afford, but they don't get what they need. So you're in this idea of partnering, to be able to get the three of us to come in and work on a part-time basis, to your point, we don't have to be there all the time. But most of these small organizations couldn't afford a CFO. But you don't need a full-time CFO. What you need is somebody part-time to guide you. You don't need a full-time marketing guy. You need somebody to say, here's where you need to be going. And so that's where this partnership thing adds a dimension a lot of people don't think about. And I think if we can help them understand that they can get this powerful resource at a fraction of the cost of a minimum wage person, it's really it's helping them understand this partnership has external things and has internal things, both of which make them more competitive and increase their bottom line.
I think I'd like to add one other point here, and that is especially kind of dovetailing on what Ron said. By managing your business 1 or 2 days a week rather than full time is really important for making these improvements and optimizing the value of the company. But it also is extremely valuable for selling the company, because the multiple that you get is going to be much higher if the owner isn't directly involved in the business. And it sounds counterintuitive. When you're running a business, there's a gratification for running your business and making all the decisions and feeling how important you are to the business. Unfortunately, that might be good for your psychic, but it's not good for determining the value of your company.
Right.
So I just think once you're interested in exiting your company, it's probably going to take a 3-year plan to do so. And a good part of that plan is going to reflect upon ways of getting you out of the day-to-day responsibilities of business by delegating it to key employees in your operation. Yes, they are going to make some mistakes, but the bottom line is, over the long term, it's going to add so much more value than you can ever anticipate by you trying to fill out, to make every decision in the company. So I think that's probably one of the cornerstones of exit planning, is getting the owner out of the day-to-day, move them from the CEO of the operation or the COO of the operation, like many are, to move them to be the chairman of the board. And that really is the key sauce to make this thing work and to realize the potential of a business.
Thank you, Ed. So next week, what we're going to do is we're going to look at driver number 8. And driver number 8 is, how do you forecast, reevaluate on a quarterly basis at minimum, and really look at where you're going, because circumstances in the marketplace change. As we've all seen here with what happened with COVID, it affected everybody. So the more you're prepared and the more you adjust, the more likely you can achieve the targets that you hope for. And as Ed was saying, develop relationships with vendors and suppliers and extract yourself from the business so that the business is growing independent of you instead of with you. So having said that, I want to thank everybody for showing up. Ron, thank you for your insights. Ed, thank you for giving us this tour of driver number 7. We look forward to another event next Friday. And next Friday, it'll be forecast and reevaluating our quarterly plans and strategies.
Okay, see ya.